It's a warm summer evening in 2006, and two young people, Kristina Branum and Christopher Mittendorf, are driving back from a shopping trip in rural Tennessee. They're laughing, planning their future together, maybe even talking about their upcoming wedding. Their cars packed with new clothes they just bought, and life seems full of promise. But then, poof, they're gone, vanished without a trace. Their car turns up abandoned miles away, doors unlocked, a cell phone and bags of personal items just sitting there like they stepped out for a second and never came back. No screams, no struggle, just a quiet road swallowing up two young lives. What happened to this couple? Did they run away, or did something darker pull them into the shadows? Welcome to Story Room by Rico. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's dive in. Share where you're watching from in the comments. Stick around because this story takes twists you won't see coming. And it all starts in a sleepy little town with more secrets than it lets on. Kristina Branum was only 17. She had those kinds of eyes that seemed to hold both wonder and grit. A high school student in Hardin County, Tennessee, Kristina was the kind of girl who dreamed beyond the county line. Not in a reckless way, but in the way girls dream when they know there's something bigger waiting. Christopher Mittendorf was 21. Steady, quiet, the kind of guy who worked long shifts and came home to the girl he loved. He lived with Kristina in his mother's house in the small town of Savannah. Not fancy, not rich, but it was enough for them. More than enough, actually. Friends described them as inseparable, always holding hands, always looking toward the future. Kristina had dropped out of high school, but not because she didn't care. She wanted to help support her household. Chris worked construction. They weren't perfect, but they had each other, and that was their anchor. On July 27, 2006, they did something simple. They went shopping. Just a trip to grab some clothes. They left in their green geoprism and headed off to a town nearby. Kristina called her mom, said they'd be home soon. Normal stuff, no sign of anything wrong. But they never came home. Never called again. No text. No noise. Why would two people so full of life just disappear into thin air? To understand that, we need to look deeper into the place they called home, and what may have been hiding just beneath its surface. Savannah, Tennessee, feels like the kind of place you only see in old postcards. About 7,000 people live there, tucked between gentle hills and the wide, winding Tennessee River. On the surface, it's everything you'd expect from a small southern town. Porch swings, slow traffic, and kids riding bikes at dusk. But small towns are strange things. They're both open and closed. Everyone knows your name, but not everyone knows your story. And sometimes the truth hides behind a smile or a nod. Back in 2006, Savannah was grappling with a few things. The economy wasn't great. The job market was thin. And there were rumors, always rumors, about drugs moving through back roads and abandoned barns. Nothing major, or at least nothing people wanted to admit. But it was there, humming beneath the quiet. When Kristina and Chris vanished, the town did what most small towns do. It started whispering. Some said the couple had run away, maybe eloped, maybe started fresh somewhere else. Others said they'd crossed the wrong person. Someone who didn't like their freedom. Someone with something to lose. The police began asking questions. Friends, neighbors, family. But no answers came. Only more confusion. And then, on August 1st, a farmer in Lawrence County made a discovery that would shatter the calm and deepen the mystery. Granddaddy Road. That's where the car turned up. A stretch of dirt road in the middle of nowhere, about 50 miles from where Kristina and Chris lived. Their green 1994 geoprism was just sitting there, doors unlocked, bags of clothes from their shopping trip in the back seat. A cell phone left behind. Personal items scattered. It looked like they had just stepped out. But no footprints. No drag marks. No blood. No signs of a struggle. That's when a witness came forward. They said they saw Kristina and Chris get out of the prism and climb into a white car. Just like that. No shouting. No fight. Just gone. Who was driving that white car? Was it someone they knew? Or someone pretending to be friendly? Police chased the lead. They tried to track the vehicle, but it led nowhere. No plate, no solid description. Just a ghost car driving off with two young people inside. And that's when things started to unravel. The search for Kristina and Chris was on, but it was about to turn into one of the most confounding cold cases in Tennessee history. The days after the car was found were frantic. Police organized search teams. Volunteers showed up with water bottles, boots, and bug spray, ready to comb the woods for any sign. They swept fields, creek beds, ditches, anywhere two people might have wandered or been taken. Aerial searches used helicopters. Police dogs were brought in. Divers were sent into the Tennessee River. Still nothing. Not a shoe. Not a fingerprint. Not even a scent trail the dogs could hold on to. That's when the theories began. People who had never met Kristina or Chris suddenly had opinions. Social media wasn't big yet, but word spread fast in small towns. Some believed the couple had gotten in over their heads. Maybe they were carrying cash. Maybe they were set up by someone they trusted. Others thought this was a love run gone wrong. Maybe Chris had enemies. Maybe Kristina had secrets. Kristina's family pushed back hard. They knew her. She wouldn't just disappear. Not without calling. Not without taking her favorite necklace. Not without hugging her mom goodbye. Chris's mom said the same thing. He wouldn't leave me like this. Not without a word. Then the darker whispers started. People mentioned a local man. Someone with a reputation. Someone known for intimidation, who had friends in rough places. His name never made the official report, but everyone in town knew who people meant. The police looked into it. They had to, but without physical evidence, there was nothing to hold anyone on. And so, the whispers turned into silence. And the silence turned into years. But what happened during those years, how grief took root, how questions grew louder, would set the stage for a break no one expected. Next up, we follow the trail of sorrow and frustration through the cold case years, and how a family's refusal to give up changed everything. By the end of 2006, Kristina and Chris were still missing, and no closer to being found than the day they disappeared. Months passed, then a year, then another. Their names slowly faded from the headlines, but their families lived the mystery every single day. Hardin County investigators had filed dozens of reports. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was brought in. But there were no suspects, no witnesses willing to go on record, no hard leads. The car was towed and examined, but no forensic breakthroughs emerged. Meanwhile, their families clung to any hope. Kristina's mom, Pam, kept her daughter's room exactly how she left it. Bed made, shoes neatly lined up, makeup bag untouched. She said it felt like Kristina could walk through the door at any moment. Cheryl, Chris's mom, attended every law enforcement meeting she could. She made calls, sent letters, kept pressure on the system. She refused to let anyone forget. "I won't stop until I bring my son home," she told local news in 2009. Billboards went up along highways, bearing their faces and the word, "missing." But after a while, even those came down. Some tips trickled in, but most led nowhere. "I saw a girl who looked like Kristina in Mississippi." There was a guy matching Chris's description in Georgia. Police checked. Every time it was nothing. Then came the con artists. People pretending to have information, looking for reward money. Others who tried to manipulate grieving families into false hope. It was cruel, exhausting, and it drained the strength of even the most determined. The worst part? Watching the world move on. Watching holidays come and go without them. Watching friends of Kristina and Chris get married, have kids, start careers. Time didn't stop for the world, but it did for the families. Every birthday was a wound. Every anniversary a quiet scream. Still, they held on to hope. If there was no body, there was still a chance. But beneath that hope was another emotion. Suspicion. Because certain people in town still wouldn't talk. Certain names still sparked fear. And there was always this feeling that someone knew something. By 2013, the case was cold on paper. But under the surface, it was burning with unanswered questions. And finally, one of those questions started to get an answer. Next, we uncover the moment a single tip changed everything, and the chilling truth that followed. The phone rang at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation office in late 2013. Just another call, one of thousands they'd fielded over the years. But this one was different. The person on the other end didn't ask for money. They didn't hesitate. They said something specific, something only someone with knowledge of the case would know. The details were too sharp to ignore. The caller spoke about a local man, one who had once been loosely connected to Kristina and Chris. Someone the families had heard whispers about, but who had never been formally investigated. According to the tip, this man had confided in someone years earlier, sharing things he should not have known. Things only someone involved would know. The name had come up before. Investigators had filed it away. But this time, the pieces clicked. The TBI reopened the case files. They combed through interviews, old evidence, even phone records. They retraced the timeline, looked into this man's whereabouts in 2006, and spoke to people who had long since tried to forget what happened. Then came the gut punch. The man in question had passed away. No interview, no interrogation, no confession, but the circumstantial evidence began to mount. Old acquaintances of the suspect came forward, sharing stories that made the hairs on investigators' necks stand up. They spoke about behavior that was erratic, violent, and paranoid. About nights the man disappeared. About how he had suddenly changed after July 2006. One person even said he had talked about Kristina and Chris late at night, mumbling under his breath like the names were ghosts that haunted him. No direct confession, but it was enough. And there was one final clue. A burned-out building on the outskirts of Lawrence County, long abandoned, where the man had once worked. Investigators searched the site with cadaver dogs. The dogs hit on something. Bone fragments were recovered, but testing proved inconclusive. It was yet another near breakthrough, a cruel one. By September 2014, the TBI brought Kristina and Chris's families in for a sit-down. They laid out everything they had. The truth? It was the closest thing to closure the families would get. The case was officially reclassified. Investigators believed Kristina and Chris had been victims of foul play. But the suspect they believed responsible was gone. No arrest, no trial, no concrete justice. Still, it gave the families something they hadn't had in 8 years. Answers. But it also raised one last burning question. How had this man stayed under the radar for so long? And that question leads us to a darker truth about small towns, silence, and the weight of secrets that never quite die. If you're still watching, you need to subscribe. For years, Kristina and Chris's story barely made it past local news. A couple of AP Wire blurbs, a mention in a Tennessee crime bulletin, but nothing national, nothing that would push the story into the spotlight it needed. But that changed when the internet caught wind. In 2009, a post appeared on a missing persons forum. Someone had copied Kristina and Chris's flyer and added a caption. They vanished into thin air. Why aren't more people talking about this? The post gained traction. True crime bloggers picked it up. A few YouTube creators, early pioneers of faceless storytelling, made short videos piecing together what little was publicly available. They asked the questions locals had whispered for years. What really happened on Granddaddy Road? Who was the man in the white car? And why didn't this case blow up like others with far less mystery? By 2011, a Reddit thread surfaced on the r/unresolved mysteries subreddit. It had hundreds of comments. Internet sleuths began digging, comparing details from the witness account, satellite maps of Lawrence County, and other cold cases with similar patterns. Some of these theories were wild. Some were chillingly plausible. One user noted the location where the geoprism was found matched an old bootlegging route, once used to move illegal goods under the radar. Another pointed out how rare it was for two people to vanish at once without any trace, not even a dropped receipt or footprint. Others criticized law enforcement. Why hadn't they released more details? Why was the only known clue, the white vehicle, never traced? But the most impactful voices were the quiet ones. The family members who joined those forums under anonymous usernames, sharing what they could, pleading for attention. Kristina's cousin, Chris's old co-worker, people who weren't seeking fame, just resolution. In 2014, after the TBI's announcement, The online community reignited. Articles were shared. Podcast episodes aired. Suddenly, Kristina and Chris weren't just names on a missing persons flyer. They were people, with a real story and real heartbreak behind them. And in a strange way, the internet had done something the system hadn't. It kept their story alive. But this renewed attention also had consequences. People began to question Savannah itself, its culture, its secrets, and what kind of silence let something like this go on for years. That silence would crack one more time, not with evidence, but with emotion. Stay tuned. Subscribe to Story Room by Rico, because up next, how a town's soul was reshaped by the weight of two names it couldn't forget. Savannah was never the same. At first, when Kristina and Chris vanished, there was confusion, then fear. But what followed was something deeper, something harder to shake. Guilt. People in town began to question what they hadn't seen, what they hadn't said. The ones who had dismissed the early rumors, who assumed it was a teenage runaway situation or a lover's spat. Now they couldn't sleep at night. Mothers kept their kids closer. Friends looked at each other a little differently. The lines of trust blurred. For the businesses Kristina and Chris visited, the memory lingered. One store owner remembered Kristina trying on a necklace just hours before she disappeared. She never sold that piece. It hung in the window for years, a quiet tribute and a heavy reminder. The school Kristina once attended quietly set up a memorial scholarship. They didn't advertise it. They didn't post about it on Facebook. But every spring, a small envelope with her name on it was handed to a graduating senior with plans to leave town and chase something bigger. But not all the changes were quiet. People started speaking out. Whispered accusations turned to confrontations. Church parking lots became places of heated debate. Friendships ended. Family dinners turned sour. Everyone wanted to know, how could this have happened in their backyard? How could someone so dangerous live among them without anyone noticing? A local pastor held a town hall meeting in 2015. Not about crime or justice, but about grief. He said the town had a wound it refused to clean. He urged people to talk, to grieve together, to stop burying pain under politeness. Some people cried. Some walked out. Some never came back to church at all. Kristina and Chris's names became more than names. They became a question, a weight, pressing down on the community, asking, are we really who we say we are? Even the police department felt it. Officers who had worked the case retired early. Others carried it with them, replaying interviews in their heads, wondering what they missed. What if they had acted sooner? What if they'd searched harder? Savannah didn't forget. It just got quieter about it. But every year around late July, there's a tension in the air. Like the town holds its breath. Like the hills themselves remember. And that silence would echo one last time. This time, through the voice of a father who never gave up. Randy Branum still drives the back roads sometimes. He'll pass the old stores, the faded billboards, and sometimes even the stretch of Granddaddy Road where Kristina and Chris's car was found. He doesn't always stop, but when he does, he sits for a while, looks at the trees, listens to the wind. He says it feels like they're still out there, not alive but present. Like part of them got woven into the dirt and the branches. Like the land remembers. In 2014, when the TBI sat the families down and explained what they had uncovered, Randy said thank you. Then he said nothing at all, because there were no right words. Not when the answers come too late to change the outcome. Still, there was peace in knowing. A fragile kind of peace, but peace all the same. Savannah moved forward, as towns do. The scholarship in Kristina's name still exists. A mural now sits near the edge of town. Just two silhouettes holding hands under a Tennessee sky. No names, but everyone knows who it's for. The case of Kristina Branum and Christopher Mittendorf is one that never really ends. Not because of what was found, but because of what never was. Their story isn't just about a disappearance. It's about how love, grief, silence, and memory fight for space in a town that never expected to become a headline. Maybe Kristina and Chris went looking for something bigger that day. A future, a dream, maybe even freedom. Whatever they were chasing, they didn't get the ending they deserved. But their story made people stop, think, look closer, and maybe, just maybe, that's how you keep someone alive, by refusing to forget. Because some disappearances leave behind more than questions. They leave behind echoes, and sometimes those echoes are louder than words.